Although they were about that 300 million range, it was like coming into a mid-market company, but starting from zero. I never learned how to look externally to community. I was all internal brand, employer brand. When I left there, it kind of felt like a divorce. I had nothing. Before they hand me the offer, he goes, so I got to talk to you about something. It's like, well, I heard, you can be a bit of a bulldog. And I'm like, how much of myself am I going to bring to work? People say I'm unapologetically me. That doesn't work. Not at work.
Welcome to another episode of Founders Growth. My name is John Hill, aka Small Mountain, and I'm the founder of Adapted Growth. This interview is a little bit different than the ones you're used to seeing on here because Stephanie Valenti is technically not a founder, but she is a master of her craft. The information in this interview about managing yourself, managing sales was so deep and so great that we decided to launch this episode even though we recorded it whenever I was going a completely different direction with the show. There's a lot of really cool stuff in here. I think it's really going to help you. Check it out. Today, we're joined by Stephanie Valenti, who's been a 4-time executive in these kinds of roles. She has been giving back, facilitating with CRO courses, and also pouring back and giving back to her network, helping other people figure out some of this path. And super excited to have her on the show. We've been connected on LinkedIn for a long time. Her content is epic. You should be going and reading it if you're not already. Welcome to the show, Stephanie. I'm so glad that you're here.
Oh, so glad to be here, John. This is going to be a lot of fun today. I just know it.
Awesome. So, oh gosh, there are so many areas and pockets that I'm excited to dive into with you on this conversation, right? But the first one that I want to talk about is being a salesperson as a woman, right, is unique. And I didn't realize exactly where all these differences were for women in sales until I started actually coaching, right? Because as a practitioner, I was just kind of doing my own thing, and then started to see some of the stuff that I can do because I'm a guy that might be harder for some women to do in the same sales role.
Yeah.
Can we start the conversation kind of talking about that as both like a salesperson and also as an executive? Where are the struggles of being a female in these kinds of roles show up, and how are we working on that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I had some experiences throughout my career that I've used in many conversations to share the differences in communication, treatment, et cetera. And the thing that sticks out to me the most is I was applying for my first director role in a sales organization. And it's at the end of my interview. So I've done all these interviews, right? I'm well known in the organization. I had been there for at that point about 6 years, well known for success, President's Club, everything as a leader. And I get in there, and before they hand me the offer, he goes, so I got to talk to you about something. Right? He leans back and I'm like, what's up? He's like, well, I heard, you can be a bit of a bulldog. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what the heck is that, right? What the heck is that? And so I was proud of myself because in the moment I said, huh? Like, what do you mean by that, right?
Yeah.
And allowed him to elaborate. And I'm at this point, gosh, how old am I? I might be 31 maybe,
Okay.
right? And he's an older gentleman. I mean, he's probably 60.
Okay.
And so he says, he goes, like, you're direct and like you push and you don't stop until, your team hits what they need. And I said, let me ask you something. Would you say that same category to a man? Would you, if I was sitting across from you and I was a guy, would you say I've heard you're a bit of a bulldog? And he just kind of stared at me. And so that experience stuck with me forever, right?
Yeah.
Things have happened like that again. In my first executive role, I had the CMO. I was the SVP of sales. The CMO had sat with me and pulled me aside, and he's like, "Hey, like, you can kind of be like a bit aggressive sometimes." And I'm like, totally taken aback. The CEO's over here telling me, speak up. Like, you own the largest headcount in this organization. You own our revenue. Like, speak up. So I do it. And then someone else is telling me I'm too much. And so that's been something I've had to learn for a long time. And I think is a huge differentiator. In the way that people see women and see men, not just in sales in general.
Absolutely.
If women behave in some of the same ways through speech, through communication, through ownership, it's taken and put into a category where it would never happen the same way for men. So it's still a balance, right? I don't want to be called out for that. I don't want to have to get argumentative
Hmm.
or combat like my natural self of being direct.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want people to have that negative view of being too forward. So I
Yeah.
still am challenged with it, right? How far do you go? How far do you fight?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was coaching a woman recently, right? And we were doing her personality stuff, right? And that's where everything starts for us. And she's very direct and very logical and wants to win. And so she's all in that space. And I'm kind of showing it to her. And she was like visibly frustrated. And I was like, okay, like, what's up? And she goes, like all my managers are telling me that I need to be funny and I need to smile, and I'm trying not to get offended by it. And it's like, well, if you don't want to be that person at work, you shouldn't have to be that person at work, right? But I'm kind of speaking from a place of privilege because everyone's expecting me to be direct and clear and push for the goal and do all these things, right? So it would be nice to where like you didn't even have to go fight for the right to be that person, right? Like it would just
Yeah,
be that's just who you are, and
yeah,
you fit with the culture and you fit with the team, and let's go get it.
yeah,
Very, 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 because like as a rep, none of this was even in front of me, and I would meet certain women who were like very bubbly, right? And if anything, I would kind of feel this kind of like, well, I'm not bubbly. Maybe I need to be bubbly, right? So I was kind of feeling this pull in the opposite direction sometimes because
yeah,
I can be very critical and kind of cold and probably too direct at times.
yeah.
And yeah, like you got to figure out which battles are worth fighting and which ones aren't, you know?
Yeah, and at this point, I've learned what that balance is, and sadly, John, there's always going to be politics at work. There is.
Yeah.
Like people will say, no politics, get rid of the politics. Good luck. Like it exists no
Yes, it
matter what.
does.
We're humans. There's psychology, and so learning yourself, and you can't do it early on. Like you've got to make the mistakes. You've got to have someone confront you, and you've got to decide like how much of myself am I going to bring to work, how much am I
Yes.
going to adjust, and unfortunately that's the way the world works, right?
Hmm.
So people say I'm unapologetically me. That doesn't work, not at work,
Yes.
right? Not
Yes,
at work.
absolutely, right? Because you're
So
part of a bigger machine, right?
yes, yes,
And I was in sales for about 10 years before I started to work with a coach. We did the personality stuff, and
yeah,
he shows me, he's like, hey John, you're way over here. And he's like, this is where most salespeople hang out. This is why you're feeling some of this
yeah,
friction that you feel in the role. And it goes, the other part is you're desperately looking to be taught, and most people in sales don't have anything to teach because they're all just like instinctually guided. And
yes,
I was already doing kung fu and had already gotten to like a decent level there and everything. And I was like, well, I can do hard things whenever I know what the path needs to look like to go do that. But my
yeah,
frustration was because I was working with someone who's very instinctual at the time. And so my first day of being a field rep was don't tell anyone you're new, which is like my superpower. I love being the new guy.
yeah,
Hang out and let's make it happen. Like that was the summation of all my training to go out and be a medical device rep in the field for the first time. And terrifying, like was not prepared in any way, shape, or form.
it's so all inclusive training. I mean, come on, you can't be successful at that. What's wrong with you, John?
And I'd come from a very corporate environment, and I didn't realize like how much kind of like greatness I was getting from the corporate training stuff. I mean, a lot of it was frustrating because I wasn't really ready to hear it yet, but I did come out with like, stuff like what's in it for me, WW or WIIFM, and some of this little stuff that like just kind of sticks with you for a long time when you're in these kinds of roles. But like in small business, there wasn't this kind of path of development. It was so much more just like tossing in the deep end and
Yeah,
everything. And that's honestly why this show exists, because it's hard
yeah,
to figure out how to like keep your head above water in the deep end until you're ready to figure it out.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then take that new, like that being that new person, medium to small business, and then be a brand new executive there. Oh
Uh,
man, no
yeah,
training manual for that.
absolutely, for sure, right? So I think whenever we first got connected, I think you were still at Vari, right? And as we speak, I am using my Vari desk. This is maybe one of the best investments I've ever made in my entire like home office kind of situation.
Love
Um,
that.
what was it like leaving? Was that when you went into more of the smaller business? Was on the exit from Vari?
No, so even like coming to Vary, so growing up in the Staples organization, I was there for 8 years, right? And at
Hmm.
the time they were Fortune 100, 10,000 plus sales reps. I mean, it was an incredible machine. And the training I got there, even like not just sales training, but leadership training,
Yeah.
everything was amazing. And then coming into Vary, although they were about that 300 million range when I joined,
Hmm.
it was all marketing and DTC, e-com led, right? So
Yes.
it was like coming into a mid-market company, but starting from zero,
Mm.
because I was supposed to build out that B2B engine. And so that was kind of when things changed, right? When I needed to learn how to be an executive for the first time.
And okay, kind of an potentially interesting question from my side, right? So they've
Yeah,
got the e-com, they've got the DTC stuff down. You're tasked to come in and build the B2B stuff.
that's right.
Were you constantly having to kind of like validate and maybe like work harder to show the work because they weren't moving in this direction, or were you given a lot of like leeway to figure it out and room to kind of like fail? Like how pressurized was that environment when you were walking into Vary?
You know, in the moment, I thought it was highly pressurized.
Hmm.
Looking back, I wasn't pressure at all. Not to what I've experienced with like PE and that.
Yeah.
But a lot of freedom. The interesting thing is I was working, like I was at the executive table reporting to the CEO. I had my peers were like insane experience, right? These were
Hmm.
people and executives in D2C retail based companies for a very, very long time, but none of them really had B2B experience. And so they kind of allowed me to do my thing. Right.
Mm.
So they gave me freedom. They let me say, how do I think things should be structured? What processes, what tools, what systems? But I was just pulling from my experience at a Fortune 100, which was helpful, right?
Yeah.
Because I did all the training, the structure. I've seen what worked, what didn't work over my 8 years of time. So it was helpful, but there were a lot of things where I was just kind of pulling it out of thin air.
Yeah.
There wasn't community yet.
Yeah.
I couldn't go to Pavilion and go pull a template, right? Or
Yeah.
grab like a colleague. No, I had no one to lean on, and no one on the executive team had done this either. So it was very lonely.
Mm.
And I was a bit siloed as well.
Okay. Interesting. Did the
Yeah.
siloing, was that helpful to you? Like, did it give you room and space to figure it out, or do you think it kind of slowed down your process and your growth there?
In the moment, I think it was helpful. I mean, I had relocated for this role,
Hmm.
so it was just me. I would go home on the weekends to my family. I was down in
Whoa.
Texas for a week. I did that for 3 months.
Yeah.
So I worked like I don't know, like 12, 14-hour days, constant, just trying to figure things out. But I was in my own head, right?
Yeah.
So you only know what you know, and I was researching, but there wasn't AI. I mean, we're talking 8 years ago, right? So
Yeah.
I was thoughtful about all of my approaches, but if would I do it the same way today? Right?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't because I know so much more, right? I
Yeah.
would reach out to peers. I would work with my departments to gain leverage and buy-in. Like I would do things differently. But then, I mean, yes and no, right? Yes and no.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest part that I remember that was exceptionally challenging that I definitely wouldn't do anymore because those that know me know that I teach forecasting, right?
Hmm.
So I talk about this example in annual planning and forecasting a lot. The CFO was real tough at this
Okay.
organization. He was your very stereotypical negative, like, kind of person, and he was real tough on me, like
Mm.
real tough on me. And I remember him coming to me and saying, how many headcount do you need to hit blank amount of revenue for next year? And I'm new in my role, right? I started in September with that company, and we were coming into January, and they're like, how many headcount? And I didn't know that sales capacity planning was bad. So I was like, "Ooh, I got this," right? And I had a giant spreadsheet. Like I took entire books of business and created account management roles and like what growth do we need in each? And if we had a business development, what could they do? And what should the quotas be? And I mean, I was so thoughtful and did so much work. I know now that that is a fool's way, right, of creating a forecast. And don't ask me head count. It needs to go the opposite way, right? But that's what I did, and it was problematic to say the least, right? It was
Yes.
problematic.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
Um, so I want to touch on this thing because I think that one of the coolest things that has happened are these pockets of community, right? And it's weird because everyone kind of has their walls up around coaching and consulting and mastermind groups and stuff like that. But on the other side of it, right? Like as someone who does recruiting and placements, right? If you're not taking time to upskill yourself in any way, shape, or form, I have a hard time kind of thinking that you're going to put in the work to rise to the occasion, right?
yeah,
And then, things like Pavilion, which I've been kind of like eyeing for like a hot minute now, right? Because, I'm doing more of this kind of fractional stuff and I
yeah,
probably need a bigger community more focused around that.
yeah,
But I have a network of, people who are doing similar things that I can go turn to. And much like yourself, I kind of have this moment of like, why would I ever try to figure this thing out completely on my own when, I know people, right?
yeah,
And that community aspect to me, I think is one of the most helpful things on this path, right? Of like finding a community of other people for
yeah.
your side, right? As someone who is more at the executive level, how important is it to you whenever you're looking to place people, to bring people onto your team, that they're doing something to kind of like upskill themselves or keep the edge on their craft?
Yeah, mandatory, right? I mean, in the past, if I think about when I got started in sales, there was only one motion, right? There was kind of outside sales. You went out, you met with businesses, you did your discovery, you did your price proposal, and you left. Like it wasn't marketing supported, it wasn't partnership supported. There was no channel. Like
Yeah.
it legit, like that's how you did it. And
Yeah.
the world has changed, and what works today may not work tomorrow, and the volatility of that market and the change of just total go to market motions is dynamic. And
Yeah.
so without a community, without continuing education, without continual intentional research and learning, you're screwed. Right? Like you
Yes.
can't just rest on your old school morals and expect them to allow you to continue to produce.
Mm.
And I'll say community changed my life, right? It dramatically when I was at Staples and at Vari, I never learned how to look externally to community or LinkedIn or brand, and I was all internal brand,
Hmm.
employer brand. And after Very, when I left there, it kind of felt like a divorce, right?
Oh,
Like
interesting.
I had nothing. I hired all of my people. They all still worked there. It was a little traumatizing. And when I went to be like, what do I want to do next? I didn't have any community or network or people to talk to. So
Hmm.
what are you going to do? And that's when I found Pavilion. And that's when some of my best friends now are from that. Right. And, I have an entire network every day that I can reach out to. Like I had mentioned, like I'm interviewing right now, right?
Hmm.
So I didn't apply to any of the places I'm
Yep.
interviewing with, just for the record, right?
Yep.
It's all because of the relationships and community that I've built. And I recommend getting out for people that are in big companies where they have like just their internal employer brand.
Oof.
I would rethink that real quick.
Yeah,
Create your
right.
own.
And there's all this pressure about, develop a personal brand and post content and stuff like that. And I make content, I've written a book, right? I've done the whole thing.
Uh,
And it's, it takes time, but it's also the lift is just worth doing, and thinking I got really lucky because my kind of voyage into small business and entrepreneurship, I got to work with like a mentor kind of back to back. So I had a lot of insight, was working with a coach on the sales stuff. And then I just started networking here locally, right? Like I live in Dallas Fort Worth still. And so just was networking and networking and networking. And like all of a sudden I was like, I don't have to figure most things out by myself, right? I can go talk to someone with more expertise, more experience, and then I don't have to recreate the wheel. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize how much I kind of like, that's a hard place to get to, right? Like, because, when you're young and, ego is like super high and everything, you're trying to prove yourself and trying to figure out who you're going to be when you grow up. Like, you're not even aware that you're carrying more weight than you need to in some of these
Yeah.
spots.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And you try to carry it all because you have something to prove.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
Something to prove. Yes, absolutely. Okay. So you talked about interviewing now, right? Finding your next role. I would love to kind of talk about now this is gonna be a little bit flawed because individuals need different things and different roles. And there's, some people are built for the big corporate structure. Some people need to be in startups and different things like that. For Stephanie, right?
Yeah.
What are potential red flags for you that might indicate that it's not a great role or a place that would be a good fit for you?
Yeah. So what I've learned is you can't come up with the red flags until you truly know what you want, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so, it's funny, I've coached people on this forever, but I never took my own coaching. Isn't that funny that we do that, right? We're great coaches to others, but we don't take our own guidance. And
Yep.
so this time I did, right? I've had a lot of opportunistic things happen to me, right? Where I was at one organization and kind of got pulled to the next, pulled to the next, pulled to the next, but it didn't have a lot of intentionality to it.
Yeah.
Where it was like, I want to do this, and so I am going to interview for this. That hasn't happened. And so this time I got my notebook out, right? Like got my notebook out and I wrote, what are the things, like what are my superpowers? What are the things that are important to me? Where do I thrive? What are the things that haven't been great? And what do I associate with that not goodness, right? Like what are the things that weren't good there? And so I really wrote it down and then spoke with Amy Willis, and she said, like, get a scorecard out, Steph, like get the scorecard out. And so created a scorecard. And what I found for me is I identified the size of business that needs my expertise, right? Doesn't mean I can't do startup. I can, but my strength is in scale up. So what does that mean? What size business do they need to be? Where are they at in funding? Are they profitable? Are they not profitable? What are the type of roles that are currently in the organization? What am I leading? Like, am I leading individuals? Am I leading leaders? Am I leading senior leaders? Seasoned leaders, right? Like what are the people I lead the best in that point of their career? What am I selling? That's important. And I wrote all of those things up. And now every time I have a conversation, because I don't say no to conversations, right? So every conversation I have, I'm checking my boxes, right?
Yeah,
Is it
I love
fitting
that.
my boxes? Because if it's not, guess what? I'm going to get in there. I'm going to do great work. I'm going to make a really big impact, but I am going to be a bit miserable, probably not very happy in the background. I'm going to let it overtake my personal health, which I've done very many times, right? And then it's not going to work out and we're into, going our separate ways anyway. And I'm looking for a home this time. I want to stay around for a while. And so I'm just being very, very particular.
I love that. I talk a lot about being intentional with my stuff, right? Because like in martial arts, it's one of the biggest things. And also I played poker professionally for a while, and I had a coach there, and he talked about, what is your intention? Are you trying to win the hand? Are you trying to win the day? Are you trying to win the tournament? Are you trying to make sure that you make smart enough decisions so you can come back and play tomorrow? And that was like a whole different way of thinking for me. And I find that, professionally, I was just, I would get poached. I would go find something. But I wasn't really intentional with it until I started my company, honestly. Right.
Yeah.
And getting to that place of like clarity of, oh, they're in the no pile. They're in the no pile. And also being honest enough to really identify where you can have the impact that you want to have. Right. Because like as a coach and a trainer, the best thing I can do is say no to a bad fit, because I can't coach into that brick wall of like dissonance, you know?
Right.
So if, you know, I tell people like, this is going to be a weird metaphor, but pretend that you're the surgeon. And if someone dies on the table, you're going to have a big malpractice claim, like a lot of money. And and like, you should feel bad about it as well if someone dies on the table. So just don't take that gamble, right? Be intentional. If it smells weird, you should probably put it down and go focus on finding something that doesn't smell weird, right? As opposed to just thinking you're going to be enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When
It's almost, I'm sorry, one thing on that,
Yeah,
John,
please.
it's almost like, especially, and I don't want to stereotype some women in this, it's more about people that are helpers, right? So for me, I'm a helper. I always want to fix something or help someone, and you can get yourself in big fat trouble when you're interviewing, when you're like, oh, I see these problems, or this doesn't look good, but I can fix it. I can fix it. I can make it better. That's now something I watch for. Do I think that I want to join this organization because I can help or make it better? Not that you shouldn't want to do that, but it shouldn't be the number one thing that you're feeling,
100%.
because otherwise you're going to be put in a situation, right, in which we just discussed. Yeah.
One of my very early kind of fractional roles, right? I got to come in and kind of sit on top of, like, I wasn't wearing the label of CRO because I didn't want it, but I was kind of sitting on top of marketing support or marketing success and sales. And I had the cape on too much, right? Because the CEO was a little bit too emotional and too easy to fly off the handle. And I kind of had this thing of like, I think I can bring him down a little bit. I think I can kind of like make him consistency, which he didn't want at all, right?
No, of course not.
And so my intention wasn't really super solid there, and it led to some friction in there. And now I try to do the same thing. Like, one of my red flags is like, if I'm, you know, if we're talking about it and someone's like, hey, I need you to come fix my team. Like, nope, we're done, because, you know, that person isn't even aware that they're part of the problem. Right. And so then I'm going to have to go in there and show them that they're part of the problem, and they're probably not going to want to hear that from me. So
100%.
I, you know, this is a lesson from poker. I'm just going to fold and wait for the next hand.
I love that. That's really great advice.
When you were sitting down and you were doing the deep reflective work of where do you want to, like, what does this home need to look like for you? Right. Honest reflection is super important, you know, sitting down and kind of being honest with yourself. Did you learn anything kind of on the you know, on the deficiency side that you're now like purposefully trying to maybe shore up or work on? Or are you at the place of like, I'm just focused on my lanes of greatness, I know I have deficiencies, and that's like a who not how kind of situation? How are you thinking about your development from this space?
Yeah, I mean, look, I wrote down the areas that I haven't done well over the past, and what I would need to overcome that deficiency. And that if I was asked, let me just give an example because I can talk hypothetically, but a great example is during my time at SmartBug. So I was brought on at SmartBug. They're a agency, right? So it's services. I'd never run services. I was running their
product. Yeah.
Very different. I was running their total go-to-market, right? So I had marketing, sales, all client delivery, RevOps, and even some product in there. So it was a big role. I didn't have a problem with the transition of services. I found that to be something that applicable, right? What I did have problems with is I'd never run marketing before, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and I had said very transparently in the interview, look, this is a marketing agency. I've never run marketing before. And now marketing's reporting to me, and I'm leading a bunch of marketers. So like, I bold-faced asked in the interview multiple times, do you have concerns with this? Like, I'm being transparent with you that I don't have this experience. And it was like, no, we have enough marketers in the organization. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you can learn it. What I found, though, is that I had a VP of marketing that was a first-time VP of marketing. It was during a volatile change in marketing where inbound was hot, and then it was not, right?
Not, yeah.
And so, and I fumbled a little, right? Like, I knew basically what to look for, but I didn't know exactly tactically how to fix it. And so, I know now, speaking of deficiencies, that's on my list, right? So if I'm going to come on and I'm going to be a CRO that's also running marketing, awesome. I have to have a wicked marketing leader underneath me because
Yeah.
I can lead a leader of any department, technology, HR, finance. I've done it all,
Hmm.
right? But that leader needs to be an expert at their craft because I'm curious enough to ask them questions and lead them to where they need to go, but I
Yes.
can tactically not do their job. So that's on my list,
Yeah.
right?
I
I'm
love
not
that.
I'm not a practitioner there. I can't I didn't grow up with it. So
Same.
it's
Yeah.
things like that, right? Where I can't do that, so it has to be this. Or I move really fast, right?
Yeah.
So I need someone to slow me down. And what
Mm.
are the things that I'm going to do to slow myself down in my personal life, like puzzles or coloring, to
Yes.
slow my mind down?
Hmm.
So I've got a lot of things like that off to the side where if this, then that,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so that opens a lot of things. But first, I love with I love how you were talking about realizing that that was not your lane of strength, and then also figuring out how to talk about it in the interview process, right?
Yeah.
Because fake it till you make it isn't really that great in my opinion, right?
I
Like
agree.
it's going to get you to like a mid tier, but it's not really going to get you to like high levels of performance, right?
Mm,
So being able to show up and communicate honestly, right? If
yeah.
they don't like what you're bringing to the show, it's probably for the best,
Yeah.
and it takes a long time, I think, to get to that place of maturity to where you can kind of like live and let die, if you will, let the cards fall where they may in
Totally.
those kinds of situations. But
Yeah.
being able to clearly talk about those things, right? Your
Yeah.
strengths, where you have not performed as well as you would like in the past, and then also how you're going to not allow that to happen again, because you can see the gap and then you can speak positively to fixing it. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
I think my tagline is like, oh, I've made that mistake before, so I won't do it again. I mean, look, when you've been in this many different businesses with this many different go-to-market motions and you've been thrown into all these things, I've made so many mistakes,
Mhm.
like so many mistakes, but I always say like I'll make it once, I won't do it again, right?
Yeah.
I hope I'm starting to get to the precipice of like I'm not going to have to keep learning from them. Like maybe I've learned enough. I don't
Hmm.
but mistakes are just the way that I've learned, and I'm not ashamed of them,
Yeah.
right? It's risk taking. You've got to jump in and try, and you're going to make mistakes, and hopefully you come out on the other side just a little bit smarter. So
Well, and that's really the point of this show, right? Is that, we all, certain people are expecting salespeople to show up day one, ready to be able to like essentially pull rabbits out of hats, right?
yeah.
And leadership, like, I'm sure you've seen this as many times as I have, right? You take the top producing person, you put them in the leadership role, there's no grooming,
Mm,
there's no development, and then no one is even like talking or understanding why that's a struggle.
yeah.
It's a different role with a different skill set and craft that goes along with
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting, but like I keep seeing the same repeatable like issues that people make. So that brings me to my next question, right? You've done a lot of different things. You've been really connected to this for a while. What are you seeing that you're psyched about in this realm? And what are you seeing that you're like nervous about?
As it pertains to people coming into roles, like new
Yeah.
roles or promotions or yeah. I still think that we do not train our people the way that we need to. If I think back to my time in the Staples organization, the amount of training that I got as a new business developer in outside sales was um, in depth. I mean, they flew me out for training for for a week. I
Same.
had
Yeah.
like 6 weeks of in-depth training. I did ride-alongs with my leader, right? Like it was not coaching, not supporting, but true training.
Yeah.
Like someone saying, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I've, had the opportunity to see my son's training, right?
Mm,
So those that don't know me well, I have a 23-year-old who is an SDR. So I've got to see his training.
hmm.
I got to be a part of multiple organizations that had salespeople coming on and going through trainings. And I've got to be someone new coming into an organization to see what my training
Yeah.
would be like. And we do not invest enough there. We just don't. Even to the point where we don't train new people coming in to the business world, like basics, like 101s. Like I
Hmm.
think I posted about this the other day, like we don't train people, oh, when you come to a meeting, come with a notebook to take notes so that you have takeaways, right? We don't train them basics. We
Yeah.
expect people, and this is where the root of this comes from. It's not because we don't care. We as leaders will naturally think that people just know things because we do.
Yep. The curse of knowledge,
It is the
right?
curse of knowledge, and they do not. And so I'm not excited about us not making a big enough transition on that. What I am excited about, though, is take the individual contributor piece out of it or someone that recently gets promoted, right? And look at the leadership side, community,
Mm,
coaching, fractional, coursework, LinkedIn, right? So many more resources than there
agreed.
were in the
Yeah.
past. And so if a new leader comes into a role and they are on the internet and they have Google search down, guess what? They're going to find some things to really enable and make them strong, because they should know at least what to look for.
Agreed.
Whereas someone coming new into the workforce, we need to be better there as leaders. We just do. We need to invest more resources, more time, and expect less in the
Mm.
beginning and more at the end result.
Oh, interesting. I really like that. When changing topics wildly, right? A little bit. If salesperson is coming in day one, what's the most important thing that they should be doing, reading, asking for? Like how can they take those first steps on that path towards success? Like what would you recommend?
Yeah. I would first make sure you really get time one-on-one with your direct manager. They will make or break your career.
Mm.
The first thing I have told even my son is understand what the expectations are,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So like really clearly though, like
Hmm.
really black and white. Okay, I want to make sure in order to be successful here, what are the 5 things that I need to do every day, right?
Yep.
Then you can work on the how, but you
Mhm.
need to know the what first, right? Like,
Yep.
okay, if I make this many dials, if I convert those dials at this amount, if blank amount of my appointments convert to closes, like, is that how I'm successful? Cool. I'm going to write all that stuff down.
Yeah.
So that's the number one thing that I feel like, especially new managers, they forget to be very clear about
Hmm.
how success is delineated. So I think that's first. Second, like join a community. There are so many communities that are free,
Yep.
especially in this remote work environment that still
Yes.
exists for SDRs. My son does work in an office, but for those that are not, the people that work in the office have a benefit. They get to hear their peers
Yes.
and they get to talk about what's working, not working. If you don't get that, go be a part of a community and say, hey, here's my call recording. Will you listen to it and give me
Yes.
feedback? My son will text me his calls and be like, Mom, will you give me feedback on this call? What do you think I did well? What do you think I didn't do
I
well?
love that.
Not everyone has a CRO mom, right? So you can't always do that, but do that, right?
Yeah.
Like if there was a salesperson that sent me their call on LinkedIn and asked me to give them feedback, you better believe I'll do it. So
Oh,
ask,
same. Like
ask.
as a founder, I get all this outreach, right? Because everyone wants to sell me everything. And most of it is just like the worst AI driven
Oh, it's
spray and
so
pray stuff.
bad.
And I feel compelled to be like, hey, like I'm not angry at you for doing the job, but are you gonna be able to find the volume to like hit your numbers using this kind of like if you'd like some help, but here's the other part, right? I can't take the feedback off of everyone who was like, well, John, here's a way to improve your messaging, because like you can't take advice from everyone, right? Which is the
No.
other hard part of this, right? So
Yeah.
do you have any advice that you've heard or hear a lot that you think is overrated or not helpful?
I don't Personally, I don't love unsolicited advice from people that you don't trust or respect. And
Sure.
I'll say that. So let's use the example of LinkedIn messages. I get a whole lot of those, right?
Hmm.
Um, I'm not going to give that person any feedback. They don't know me. I don't know them. They didn't
Yeah,
ask for it. And so maybe they don't care to improve their
exactly.
craft. I like using the investment methodology of like, I'll invest my time in you. So I'm going to give you my dollar, and I know I'm only going to get 50 cents back for a while, and that's okay, but I'm only going to keep investing in you when I know that there's going to be a return. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
how I look at like mentorship and training and whatnot. But that's my biggest thing. And another reason why, like, I have a friend that's interviewing right now, and she's calling all these people for advice on her
Mm,
final interview and her pitch. And she's coming to me and she's like, I'm so confused. Like, I'm so confused. I feel like this, and now I'm getting in my head about this, and I'm like, wipe it, right?
yeah.
Like, you're overthinking it. Just stop getting advice from people. Go with your gut. Be authentic to your talent. Be authentic to yourself,
Mm,
and go, right? And just run. And so those are a couple different tactics that I think through.
hmm.
But my guidance for, salespeople or even sales leaders out there that are looking like, how should I get feedback or get information or learn? um Ask for it.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
it.
yeah.
That's it. Be the squeaky wheel, right? If your leader stinks, I'm sorry, but it happens. If you got
It
a
does.
stink leader, um, there's not just community. Go on LinkedIn. Go connect with a bunch of VPs of sales or CROs and say, hey, maybe you don't get free mentorship or whatever from it, but at least you say, hey, I feel like my calls are kind of yuck. Like, will you just give me some guidance here? No one is going to say no.
Yeah. Now, the hard part of that is accepting the coaching when you've asked for it, right? Because
Yes.
one of the things, like as a martial arts instructor, one of the things that would always kind of drive me crazy, they'd be like, "Well, John, you don't get it," and I'm like, "What don't I get?" Well, this is easy for you, and like there's that kind of
Yeah.
they're building that wall, and so it's one of the things that I look for as a coach because like nothing drives me more crazy than talking to someone who has their arms crossed and isn't open to the improvement that we're there to try to
Yeah.
find together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I get so dismissive, right, of someone who's
Yeah.
like, "Hey, help me, help me, help me, help me." Okay, cool. Have you done this? No, well, no, I shouldn't have to do that. I got to go over here, you know?
Yeah. Do you want my help or no?
Yeah,
Right? You asked
absolutely.
for this. You asked for this. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, diving in, right? I'm curious, what do you think? And I'm going to break this question apart a little bit. Moving from the individual contributor to a sales leader role, what do you think the hardest part of that jump is?
Yeah. There's a lot there, right?
Yeah.
I remember my being an individual contributor, taking over a team for the first time. The biggest challenge for me was learning that not everyone thinks and does things the way that I do.
Yeah.
And, I remember I was running my first big call day for a business development team, and we were supposed to make appointments. And I just couldn't understand why people wouldn't just pick up the phone. Like, what? Why won't you pick up? I mean, someone told me you needed to hit like 7. I think it was like an 8 and late. It was an 8 and late, right? You get
Yeah.
to make 8, and then you get to say later, like, you get to leave for the day. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you just go make 8? Like, pick up the phone, right? I didn't understand that everyone wasn't wired the way that I am. And so that was challenging. It took a minute for me to understand, oh, not everyone's just challenged by leaving early or motivated by exceeding an expectation. Like, you've got to really figure out what makes the individuals on your team click.
Yes.
Um, and so that was a big one for me. The second one is I didn't know how to be a leader yet. So what I did was I copycat
Mm,
led, right?
okay.
And copycat leadership is like, you try to lead like the person that just led you when you were coming out of your role,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? And so my leader was exceptionally successful. President's Club every year, always the number one team in the region. And so I'm like, oh, well, if I copy the way that that person led, then I'm going to be wildly successful. It was weirdo,
Yeah.
right? It was so weirdo. I'm sitting here trying to be quiet and analytical and like, well, what do you think? And that's not who I am,
Yeah.
right? I'm authentic, and I I am high energy and I am supportive naturally in my leadership style. And so it took me a while to figure out authenticity needed in the leader that I needed to be. So that
Yeah.
was really difficult. And then by the time I did figure those two things out, I was able to lead a successful team. But I would say that transition to the other number one thing I learned is stop saying, oh, when I was in the role, right? People people don't care,
They don't care at
right?
all.
They
Yes.
do not care. They don't want to hear back in my day. No one
Yeah,
wants to hear
absolutely.
that. So
Yeah.
make it about them. Come up with
Hmm.
your own authentic leadership style and understand what motivates each, and that not everyone thinks and does things the way that you do.
Absolutely. God, like talk about the nail on the head, right? Of
Yeah.
like I'm this kind of fish out of water for most sales roles, right? Because I like to communicate, I like to help, but
Yeah.
I'm not zero sum. I'm not driven to like, crush other people or any of that stuff, right? I just want to help and I just want to do a good job. And whenever like I first did disc with my sales coach and he was showing me, hey, John, here's why you struggle. It was like, first of all, it was beautiful to know that I wasn't the only person who could potentially be having these struggles, right? Because
Yeah.
before you go through an evolution like that,
Yeah.
everyone thinks they're on their own individual struggle bus path, right? As opposed
Yep.
to, hey, if I find people who are like me that have figured these things out and I can learn from like that, he was trying to talk me out of sales. He was trying to be like, hey, John, maybe you should go be a developer. Maybe you should go be a CPA. Because like as a C, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's some greatness here for you. And like, it's just bouncing off of me because I'm just having this moment of like, I just need to go find some C's that have been successful in this role. They're going to be able to
Yes.
like help me
Yes.
out. Now, it's hard to find a lot of C's that are,
Yes.
in sales and marketing and stuff like that. So, it's
Yeah.
been kind of quite the journey, but that was a huge moment for me, was just realizing that I was not alone. I was not the only person that was having these struggles.
Love that.
And then also kind of giving me a path of like, okay, I need to go find people who are like me.
Yeah.
And, their struggle with that, but, it did put me on the path to here.
Yeah.
Okay, so same question, but going from that sales leadership to the executive level to where you're now coaching leaders, like what
Yeah.
was it more of the same and a bigger level, or were there different lessons that you had to kind of work through and figure out?
Definitely different lessons. When I think about a sales leader, you are working in the day and the week and the month to be able to achieve activity, people results, and motivation, and then pipeline expectations, and then ultimately hitting that quota,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Every day. That's what you're doing every single day. As a leader of leaders, you should be thinking in the month and the quarter. And
Hmm.
so when I think about, okay, you're a manager, you're thinking in the week, the day, and a month, occasionally. But as a leader of leaders, you're thinking bigger, you're thinking broader, you're thinking today, but and the future. And so how do you do that mindset switch when you're focusing on priorities?
Yeah.
Initially, I got a little carried away and wanted to do too much. Right.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm thinking of the future. So I'm like, if we did this and that, and this training and this initiative and this motion, well, then we'll be able to create efficiencies, drive growth, whatever. But I'm not thinking and remembering that my leaders have all of these day, week, and month tasks. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it was a bit overwhelming in the
Hmm.
beginning. So I needed to put myself back into that seat to remember, what are my leaders doing every day? And then what can I actually take off their plate to make them more successful? So not what can I put on,
Yeah.
what can I take off? And that was a bit of a learning in the beginning
Hmm.
for me. I also remember, and I'll remember this kind of forever because it was a huge like leadership mistake. It was
Oh,
during my time at Vari.
okay.
There was a lot going on. It was probably in year 2. We maybe had 120 salespeople at this point.
Okay.
Everything was working. It was growing. And a sales leader that I've worked with since my time at Staples, right? She's kind of come with me because she's incredible, was in the room with me. I had my SDR leader and we were brainstorming about something. And I was really empowering them to make the decision, right? I'm like,
Mm.
guys, figure it out. And they're like, well, we just don't know. And I walked away and I'm like, I'm leaving the room. You guys figure it out. I was in a very high stress point and I left.
Yeah.
And this person had worked for me for a long time, right? And she kind of came to me after and she said, Steph, no, like we actually need your support. Like we can't figure it out. And we were really both like just upset, right? That
Yeah.
you were not realizing the support that we needed. And so that was a balance that I understood. Like had to learn early, right? Where your leaders don't always have the answer.
Yep.
Sometimes it's good to push them and make them come up with it on their own and let them
Yes.
fail. Sometimes it's not. And so I didn't do that again. But 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 those are the types of things that like as you're taking over bigger teams, you expect certain things out of your leaders and sometimes they don't have it and you've got to come back down and then go back up and know when people need certain leadership styles. And that's when I
Yes.
really got into situational leadership too, John. Like I love it now. It's a staple I go to where learning when people need training, coaching, supporting, and mentorship.
Yeah.
And so I use that to guide myself as well.
Interesting. Very, very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
We're coming up on time, and once again,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen.
Me too.
I love your content, and what a great interview. Like I hope this helps a ton
Oh,
of people.
good.
So some rapid fire questions, right?
Do it.
If I could, what do you do to work on your craft at this stage?
Yep. Mentorship,
Okay.
because, um, and not for me, I'm mentoring, but I'm going to tell you, I learn from my mentees almost more than I would learn from a mentor.
Hmm.
So I do have a mentor, but I mentee. If someone asks me for something, I'm generally giving. So,
Interesting.
right now it's probably 5, 6 times a week. I'm talking to somebody about something.
Interesting. Okay. When for someone who wants to move into leadership, right? Like, but they're not, the path isn't there in front of them, right? Let's say I applied for a couple of sales leadership roles. I actually applied for a role at Vari, actually. And,
You did?
yeah, I did. I drove out and, had the interview, and I don't remember who I interviewed with, but, like, I thought I was ready, and the guy came in and he goes, "Hey, like, I think you'd be great in an individual contributor role." And I was like, well, really want to kind of take the next step, and it didn't
Yeah.
work. But I think that's maybe when we got connected. I'm not really sure. But
Yeah.
if I had some stints where I was performing well on a team, and then like a key holder or assistant manager role would come up and stuff. And the pushback that I always got, well, John, you're not bubbly, right? Because I'm this kind of
Mm,
colder, critical person, right? So all of this stuff that everyone sees now is like intentional, right?
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what would your advice be to someone who wants to be in leadership? They're not getting the lane, and they want to kind of start walking down that path themselves to be prepared.
Yeah. Understand your why, right?
Mm,
Why do you want it? I think people forget. Is it just because it's the next step, or is it truly something that you want?
yeah.
Leadership can be thankless. It is about others, not yourself.
Mm,
And it takes a special type of person to have the patience that you need to be a great leader. And so write down, why do you want this? Once you've figured that out, and if it's for the right reasons, you need to speak up, not just when it's time for interviewing,
yeah.
not just for the role, but hey, I want to be a leader. Here is my why. So what are the key things that I need to work on that you see as deficiencies today that I can proactively enhance
Hmm.
to get that runway to get into that role. Those are the things that I would do there. And then I think it's come a long way, John, since leadership needs to be bubbly or high energy. I think that people now respect diversity in personality, and what people are bringing to the table. But proactively talking about a weakness is a strength, in my opinion.
I
So
I agree, right? As we were talking about before, I think it's a sign of maturity. Um, who are your favorite people to follow, right? And I'm gonna put some caveats on this, right?
okay.
In the world of leadership, who do you like? Who do you read? Who do you invest yourself in because they've got
Yeah.
good content or good lessons that have helped you?
Yeah. I am a super fan of Patrick Lencioni.
Mm,
By
it's
far
one of my
my favorite author.
yeah.
I've been to conferences. I believe in organizational health
Hmm.
and what it does to promote growth
Hmm.
within an organization and its people. So, like when I say super fan, right?
Getting
Like
getting
absolutely love it.
Getting Naked is one of my favorite sales books, but it's not even really a sales book. It's a clarity book, right? Of like really
Yes.
getting deep and figuring out like the why and the how and all that stuff. Like I remember listening to that book and like it working me.
Yeah.
I'm being ran through the ringer of realizing that I was being a little too opportunistic and I wasn't really, in
Yeah.
Kung Fu, we call it being rooted, right? Like you're sunk into your
Yeah.
stance, right? And I was not rooted, right? So I was just like a buoy. I'm just getting pushed around everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And that book really kind of led me down this path of like, I need to figure out who I am and how I want to get this thing
Yes.
done.
Yeah.
And amazing book. It's definitely on my top shelf of things that I recommend to people. Now,
Yeah.
for sales wise,
Yeah.
what, who do you like in the world of sales that you think is providing really good content? And the hard thing about sales is there's a lot of mantras, there's a lot of like social media stuff that doesn't really provide the depth. So who
Yeah.
do you like who goes deeper and is really helping sellers figure it out?
Yeah. So look, these people are friends at this point, right? So I like Jen Allen.
Mm,
I think that she does a stellar job. She's more Challenger. She worked for Challenger, right? So that's her background. But I really enjoy the tactical guidance that she gives on understanding the deal. KD is a friend.
mm,
He does great work on understanding motivation and the why behind the activities and action that you're doing within sales. So really like him as well. Kyle, of course,
mm.
Coleman is great. He gets tactical. So I enjoy that too. As far as books, I am somebody that is I think it's why I like Patrick Lencioni so much. I really love the fables and the real
Same.
life conceptual concepts. And so these books that are like step one, step two, and repeat themselves 1,000 times, not a super fan.
Same.
My favorite selling style is Sandler because it's discovery and it's strong and it's
Yep.
curiosity, and using emotional psychology to bring the deal to fruition. So,
Agreed.
but yeah,
I spent a lot of time in Sandler before, like I was actually going to buy my coach's business, right? We were in deep conversation about it. And then I started to see some of the gaps and the cracks in the veneer, right? Because I was getting a very interesting version of Sandler because my coach had been doing it for so long. And I
yeah,
started to realize that that was not common, right?
yeah,
There's some really, really top tier coaches and trainers in Sandler, but there's
yeah,
also kind of like a lot of people who were just, trying to build a business, which no harm, no foul. But like
yeah,
I was getting this very like it was like kung fu for me. It was this like it's a philosophy, it's a life approach, it's a way of like
yes,
being, not just
yeah,
something you put on to go close deals,
yeah, yeah.
um so okay, so you mentioned earlier that marketing was like kind of a thing that you had to figure out, right? So on that marketing lane, who do you really like? Who's been helpful to you on your path of being able to kind of look at that data the right way and make the right decisions?
Yeah. So someone that again, a friend, Dustin Juiced is a sales leader, but
Hmm.
he is a marketing based
Okay.
sales leader. So I love being able to speak in sales and operational language and him translate it into marketing language for me.
Huge.
So I really, really enjoy him and my time with him. During my time at SmartBug, I became very close with a whole lot of marketers. So anytime I have a marketing challenge or question, I go to them.
Hmm.
They were generally directors within that organization. And so spend a lot of time working with them too. And then of course, Kyle Lacey and I are friends. We've spent time at pavilion events together, and he's got just a great understanding of intentional marketing that goes beyond the silo of marketing, but
Mm.
cross departmentally and how it affects other organizations. Latney's great, right? Got to spend some time with her in the pavilion community as well. So there's so many. I know I'm missing people, and people are like, "What the heck?" when they listen to this, but when I say like building a strong brand means that you have unlimited resources of people to reach out to. And especially when you give as much as I do, people are always willing to reciprocate. So,
Hmm.
so keep giving because you're going to need the same amount of help at some point too.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on to
Yeah.
here and doing this. You mentioned you didn't have
So
any more
fun.
calls today, so like you didn't even really need to do this one, but I appreciate you hopping in here, keeping
Or-
it real honest and open and authentic. This is really what I'm looking to do. No talking heads, no people with good writers or anything else like that. And you really
Yeah.
brought it, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome, John. This was so fun. Such an easy combo. Thanks for having me.
Where would you like people to come hang out with you if they have questions, or if they're looking for roles, or if they've, if
Yeah.
they're watching this and they're interested in trying to work for you or under you, and
Yeah.
after you get, into your new home, where should people come hang out with you?
Yeah, I'm LinkedIn girl, right? It's my social of choice. So I'm fast on response in my DMs. So please, if you request to follow me, I'm going to accept it. And if you write to me, I'll write you back. So that's my preferred.
Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and this was really awesome. I really appreciate it.